Hello, today we will be going over the sum and difference formula. We will be presenting a series of various practice problems for you to figure out and solve step by step, as well as providing the formulas for sine, cosine, and tangent. Here are the following formulas for sine. Please take a moment to pause this video at this time and write down the formulas as needed. And we will be using these formulas in the application of the problem sine of pi over 12. The first step is writing this problem as a subtraction problem as sine of pi over 6 minus pi over 4 minus pi over 6. We know that pi over 12 is equivalent to this because pi over 4 is equivalent to 3 pi over 12, and pi over 6 is equivalent to 2 pi over 12, and 3 pi over 12 minus 2 pi over 12 equals pi over 12. And these values also represent our s and t values respectively. The next step is to figure out the points along the unit circle that each of these radian measures represent. So pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2 comma square root of 2 over 2 on the unit circle. Pi over 6 represents square root of 3 over 2 comma 1/2 on the unit circle. The next step, once the points have been figured out, is to plug these values into the subtraction formula for sine, which is sine s minus t equals sine of s times cosine of t minus cosine of s times sine of t. And then if you plug this in, it'll be sine of pi over 4 minus pi over 6 equals sine of pi over 4 cosine pi over 6 minus cosine pi over 4 sine pi over 6. For the next step, it'll be useful to refer back to the points that we mentioned previously, as the pi over 4 and the pi over 6 values and the sine and the cosine refer back to that. So sine refers to the y value and cosine refers to the x value of that radian measure. So then this will be represented by square root of 2 over 2 times square root of 3 over 2 minus square root of 2 over 2 times 1/2. And simplified, this simplifies down to square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2 over 4. And as you will notice, they have a common denominator. So this can be rewritten as square root of 6 minus square root of 2 over 4. Now we will be looking at the formulas for cosine, both the addition and subtraction formulas. Please take time to pause the video right now in order to write these down for future reference. What we will be looking at next is cosine of 165 degrees. Our first step will be to separate this into two different angle measures and use the addition formula of cosine to figure out the exact value of 165 degrees, or the cosine of it, since it is not a significant value on the unit circle. So then it'll simplify down to cosine of 120 degrees plus 45 degrees, this being s and t respectively. Next, what we will do is look at these degree measures and figure out the corresponding point on the unit circle. So for 120 degrees, the corresponding point is negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. And for 45 degrees, the angle measure is square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Next, we will plug this into the addition formula for cosine, which is cosine s plus t equals cosine s times cosine t minus sine s times sine t. And if we plug in all of the values, it will be cosine 120 plus 45 equals cosine 120 cosine 45 minus sine 120 sine 45. The next step will just be adding in those values that we wrote in earlier, which showed the reference point on the unit circle, so the coordinate point. So then cosine of 120, or the x value at 120 degrees, is negative 1/2, and then you just plug it in as follows. So negative 1/2 times square root of 2 over 2 minus square root of 3 over 2 times square root of 2 over 2. And simplified, that equals square root of 2 minus over 4 minus square root of 6 over 4. And since they have the same denominator, they can be combined into negative square root of 6 minus the square root of 2. Next, we'll be looking at the addition and subtraction formulas for tangent. Once again, pause the video at this moment in order to copy these down before we get into the practice problem. Now we will be looking at tangent of 195 degrees, which again is not a significant value on the unit circle. The first step will be to write this as an addition problem. So tangent of 135 degrees plus 60 degrees, and 135 degrees being s, 60 degrees being t. Next, we will write out not only the point on the unit circle which each angle measure represents, but the tangent of that point, or of that angle measure. So at 135 degrees on the unit circle, it is negative square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. And at 60 degrees, it is square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. And tangent equals sine over cosine, or y over x. So then the y over x value was calculated. And for 135 degrees, tangent equals -1. And for 60 degrees, tangent equals square root of 3. Using these values, we can now begin to put them into the addition formula for tangent, which is tangent s plus t equals tangent s plus tangent t over 1 minus tangent s times tangent t. And if we plug it in, it'll equal to be tangent 135 plus 60 equals tangent 135 plus tangent 60, 1 minus tangent 135 tangent 60. Plugging those values for tangent that we calculated back in step 2, we end up with the simplified version of 2 square roots of 3 minus 4 minus 2. And if we divide out that -2, it'll end up being negative square roots of 3 plus 2.